Okay, so the weird part is I was just listening to your band on the way here. From way back in the day, they were called Hawk, right?
That is correct.
And I feel really embarrassed that I didn't really know about your band until recently. And then I'm listening to it and I'm like, this is really good stuff. I heard some like early Priest kind of vibes and maybe some Dio.
Well, definitely. Now, I don't know if you're aware, but my drummer went on to play with Judas Priest, so that could
Scott.
give you a little bit. Yeah, Scott Travis.
Oh, that's so cool.
No, wait a minute. On the album, no. On the live stuff, if you see the live stuff on YouTube, Scott Travis, um, Matt Sorum played on the album.
I was going to say, I read about Matt Sorum as well. I'm like, what a 1-2 punch to have those two drummers being your band. That must have been crazy.
It was crazy, but at the same time, Matt was never really in the band. It was a studio project. When I got around to recording the album, I no longer had the band.
Hmm.
So it was studio musicians, a different vocalist, and the vocalist. One of the reasons that I hired him for the band was did sound a lot like Dio, very
Yeah.
much that Dio vibe.
It's powerful. It's some people try to sound like Dio and they don't have the growl like the undertones or something of it. And this guy has it. And I thought, man, if tribute bands were big back then, obviously you guys were doing the original thing, but he could have easily done that as a side project, just like a Dio cover band or something.
Yeah, he probably had a little of that going on before he met me. I know Scott Travis was actually in a Judas Priest cover band, so
Seriously.
so it led to his, career with Rob Halford and Judas Priest. He was also, with Rob Halford when Rob was not in the band.
Yeah, when Rob was doing Fight, I think one of my
Yeah,
favorite albums is I think they had two albums, but the War of Words album was so powerful. And my friend and I went and saw them live, and a huge part of it was to obviously see Halford, but to see Scott back there on the drums, it was just something we'll always remember. How far into your life did your band go?
not long. The band was really like a 6 month project that I had already started Metal Method. As a matter of fact, I really started Metal Method to make some money so I could put a band together.
Finance it,
And
wow.
so I started Metal Method in '82, and the band was 3 years later. And I really poured a lot of money into advertising and rehearsing the band. So it had a very short shelf life. And locally, Hollywood, uh, we made quite an impact in a short period of time. Even when I was recording the album, one of the coolest things that I remember, Guns N' Roses were in the studio at the exact same time, bumping up their EP, which was the first thing that they did. It was a short live album, and I had never heard them before. Of course, they weren't famous. They were playing the Strip. I was aware of the name, but it was amazing. Opening up the door in the control room and hearing their monitors and stuff. They're in a different uh, studio, and hear what was coming out of it. It was like, yeah, these guys, wow, they certainly have it. And it was an amazing thing to witness, going from, they had nothing then. I mean, really
Right.
nothing. I was running around the studio one time, speaking of nothing. I didn't have a pick, so I thought, oh, good. There's a guitar case. Well, actually, there's three guitar cases. There's got to be a pick in a guitarist case. I
You'd
mean,
hope
I
so.
went through all their cases and there was not one pick.
Oh my God. They kept them in their little pockets in their leather pants, I think, or something.
or shared them possibly. I don't know what was going
So you
on.
could have stolen Slash's pick and not even really known it, right?
If it was available, and yeah, I didn't have any idea who Slash was.
Yeah. 85. Wow, that's incredible because it was 2 years before Appetite came out, I believe, right?
Gee, I don't even know, but that sounds about right.
Yeah, and then for them to get that huge, and then later on they would meet up with Matt Sorum as well.
Yeah. As a matter of fact, Matt was in the studio with me
That's what I was going to
when they
ask. Okay.
yeah, and that's probably, I never asked Matt about it, but it wouldn't surprise me if Matt introduced exchanged phone numbers and whatnot at the time. I don't know.
Yeah.
But
That's incredible how you never know what connections are going to come back someday. Like sometimes you just meet somebody once and then 5 years later you get a phone call or email. You're like, hey, remember me? Hey, we're doing this project. And next thing you know, you're in Guns N' Roses. That's got to be incredible.
it was amazing. Also, at the same time in the studio, Wasp was recording,
Oh,
and I got
wow.
to know Chris Evans pretty well, which was kind of wild.
I think it's fascinating that you started Metal Method so early on. I mean, 82, from what I know, nobody was really doing what you were doing. And I think it said you were trying to find a way to teach your students remotely because you moved to California. Is that true?
That's how it started out. I was living in Denver, moved to Los Angeles, and the whole thing started out by me putting some materials together and selling them to my students back in Denver. And I also started teaching some private lessons in California. A lot of my students kept telling me, hey, man, this stuff is great, what you're teaching. And there were a couple things in the magazines at the time. That's where I first started advertising in the actually they're the fan magazines like Circus and Hit Parader and
I
that
remember
type of thing.
Circus, yeah.
So that's where I started advertising. But anyway, my students kind of convinced me to take a chance to do that. And I didn't have anything at all going for me at the time. I mean, my ex-wife and I had just moved to California. We were living in a very, very small like studio apartment. I had to sell a couple of guitars that I thought that I'd never part with, a couple of Strats,
Oh, no.
to make enough, come up with enough money to buy ads. Pretty funny. I mean, I went from, just started selling audio cassettes, small 1/6 page ads. And then I thought, okay, that's working. Let's try a third page ad. Started making twice as much money. And
Oh,
you don't have to be
wow.
too smart to say, let's try a full page ad.
Yeah.
And the thing really took off. And from the time that I started in mid 82 to about a year later, I went from making virtually nothing to over $100,000 the first year I was in business with Metal Method.
That must have been incredible. Just being in the music scene and then being one of the few people that figured out a side gig that eventually ended up becoming your main gig, right? So it's kind of like me with YouTube. It's like I never thought teaching on YouTube or my website would be my main thing after all those years of in-person teaching or playing live. So how
Mm-hmm.
how was that to transition into all of a sudden a whole new career? Was that bizarre?
When I started Metal Method, it was what I thought was a means to an end. I was hoping to use the money that I was making to invest in a band, and I did do that. But the band very quickly ran into problems. I was older than the guys that I was playing with, and I would like to think maybe a little bit more mature,
Mhm.
and it got too crazy. I mean, that's why the band itself lasted about 6 months, and I was pouring all this money into it. It's like, ooh, kind of like right now you're having such great success with what you're doing. You're working with a net to a certain extent. You know what I
Mhm.
mean? Like a
Yeah.
trapeze artist with a net,
Mhm.
in that if things get too tough, it's pretty easy to jump on the net. And my net was Metal Method guitar lessons. So I thought, I could still record an album, which I did the following year, but this is too crazy for me right now. And I didn't give up on the idea of putting a band together and following my dreams. But at the same time, I've always had the Metal Method thing to fall back on. And as I would assume you find with what you're doing with your videos, it's pretty much a full-time job in order to do it and be competitive.
Oh,
So
for sure.
I went back to doing the Metal Method lessons, and I've had a good time ever since. Well, I imagine you have had to work extremely hard to accomplish what you've accomplished with the number of subscribers you have. I mean, you don't do that just by accident. You don't stumble into it. You have to be extremely focused because obviously there's an incredible amount of competition out there right now.
For sure. It's like everyone with an iPhone or a phone can make a YouTube channel and create videos.
Tell me about it.
Yeah, so
Crazy.
it's a huge like sea of people, but at the same time, it feels like people can find their circle of fans, even if it's a small circle at first. Like mine was for a long time. I was stuck at like 5,000 subscribers forever. And then I just put out that one video and it was like the tipping point. And it was like a
And what
video.
video was that?
It's the funny part of that is it's actually a video where I had to admit that I was teaching a riff wrong. because I was trying to make a series called "You're Probably Playing This Riff Wrong." You know, it's already kind of presumptuous of me to say that, but I was teaching Enter Sandman, and I learned from tab books. And one of my biggest series is bad tab book series. You know, like Old and Justice for All and Master of Puppets books. They were all tabbed out really
Yeah.
strange. You know, so I point that stuff out. But I learned from those books. So I was playing Enter Sandman a certain way. And then somebody sent me a comment that said, "Hey, watch James play it live in this one video and you'll see that you're not doing it right." And I found out that James is actually playing it with these two fingers and then doing this weird thing. So I was doing it wrong, and I just came out and I admitted it. I'm like, you know what, you guys, I could have deleted my video, but I just wanted to come out and say I screwed up. And I started getting views and comments just because I said I was wrong about something. And that changed everything. All of a sudden, it was just a tidal wave after that, like a snowball effect.
Amazing.
Yeah, it's weird.
That's great.
I'm like, could I have gotten a viral video by playing something awesome? Nope. It had to be me saying, I screwed up, you know.
So you said that you purchased my lessons back in the VHS days.
Yes, I'm embarrassed though, because really I was so poor when I was a kid that I wasn't buying any instructionals at first. Like at first I had to get a demonstration VHS of your method, metal method, from a guy at Guitar Center who I think he felt sorry for me because he saw me come in and I could never buy anything. So he had this like demo VHS and he just lent it to me, and I got hooked from that. But it was just like a segment of it. And I don't even know if this guy dubbed it from another tape or something, but I remember you were teaching parts of Little Wing, and I thought it was so cool that you look like this metal rocker dude, but you're teaching Hendrix, you know, the Hendrix moves, and I still utilize those techniques to this day. So Hendrix must have been a huge part of your
Oh yeah.
influences.
Well, Hendrix was my era. My era was Hendrix and Zeppelin, and even before that, I was a huge Beatles fan. But I consider my influences to be primarily Hendrix and Trower, Robin Trower, that were, you know, in a similar vein. I can still remember the first song that I heard by Jimi Hendrix and where I was walking, and I didn't even have the radio. A guy across the street from me had the radio, and it was like, wow, what is that?
What song was
I
it?
never heard it. All Along the Watchtower.
Oh, perfect. Nice.
Yeah.
That's a good introduction.
But I continue to this day to be a huge fan, and his music and personality and everything else influences me a great deal. It's kind of amazing that someone that young that died when he was like 27 made such an impact on music. Yeah, one of the things that I've been into recently is taking different disciplines and seeing certain things that they have in common that kind of exposes a universal truth. Like I've been a golfer, a serious avid golfer for 23 years. And I'm still amazed after all that time that even recently, like in the past 6 months, I've learned a few things that I wish somebody had taught me all those years ago, right?
Right.
I don't know that I'd be that much farther along now, because it's the same technique. Let me put it this way. I would have been a lot better 20 years ago if I'd known the things that I know now. But I don't know that if I knew those things then, that I'd be a great deal better now.
I understand.
Just in the discipline of learning how to be, you know, a musician, an athlete. I mean, there are so many things that they have in common, if you could even consider golf an athletic endeavor.
For sure, yes. I mean, how's your
It's a
back?
game. You know what? I do pretty good, actually.
Okay.
The thing that hurts me the most is my feet, because
Oh,
I'm also a nut about walking a lot, 12,000 steps a day, doing all that type of thing.
good
So
for
my
you,
feet
man.
take a pretty good beating. Plus the golf swing, you know, you shift your weight onto your feet, and that puts a lot of stress. But anyway, taking some of the things that I found that they have in common, a big part of playing guitar, as well as golf or any sport, it's muscle memory, right? To be able to play something without even thinking about it. I had lunch with Michelangelo Badio a couple weeks ago, and I always have great conversations with him, and I always have a topic to talk with him about. And one of them was muscle memory. And I said, Michael, okay, so when you play these incredible things that you're playing, are you really consciously thinking about it? Or is it something in your subconscious that plays this stuff? And he said, oh, it's totally subconscious.
Mm,
he, he has, uh, muscle memory and so on and so forth, so embedded in his subconscious that he's able to play what he plays without thinking about it. And the same thing is true of, golf. I'm also a basketball fan, and all that stuff becomes automatic because you can watch, like when I watch basketball, I can look at someone and go, this guy's not going to make it because he's obviously thinking about it.
in his
you
head.
know
Yep.
yeah. So I've been into that type of thing recently, and it brought me to another thing, and that is guitar instructors. Well, guitar instructors have a lot in common with other types of instructions. Golf instruction for me, I've been instructed on a few other things. And when you take a private golf lesson or you take a private guitar lesson, more than 90% of the time, you go in to take a lesson and the instructor looks at you and says, okay, what do you want to work on today?
Yeah. I've been
And I
there.
mean, when I was given private lessons 40 years ago, what did I say when my students showed up? What do you want to work on today?
Hmm.
Well, the problem with that is you start with the basic fundamentals, and you really, when you're teaching someone, you've got to teach them how to hold a pick, because they can get 20 years down the line and still not hold a pick properly,
Hmm.
still not understand picking technique.
All right.
And it's just like, a golf lesson that someone says, what do you want to learn today? You tell them what you want to learn today, and they don't realize your grip wasn't right. Or at a particular point in the swing, you were so out of a line that there's no way you're going to hit the ball properly. Sure, they'll pick up on some of that stuff, but it leaves a lot of holes in your knowledge. It's
Correct.
got to be a step-by-step process. And very few people, like I said, I was the same way myself. And most people, they don't take a note about what we did this week. So when the student comes in next week, it's once again, what do you want to work on?
Yep. It's like
Instead
starting
of
over.
instead of a step-by-step process. And I like to think that that's what I've accomplished with my lessons and why they've lasted so long. And I revised them. I've revised, I don't even know how many times, but I have my complete course, and I probably revised it, say 6 times or so. And every time it's kind of like re-recording an album, except this time I'm going to get it right.
Right. I know that feeling.
But what I also like to think that people can do with my lessons, because it is a step-by-step process and I try to cover everything, is work with a private instructor. And when he says, what do you want to do this week? Well, for a beginner, it might be, let's concentrate on open bar chords, because what I'm doing with Doug Marks's course is open bar chords. I mean, open chords, not open bar
I thought
chords.
you invented a new technique.
Okay. Okay. Open chords or bar chords,
Hmm.
but you're at that point in the linear learning from A to Z.
Right.
And then you're able to get the most out of personal instructions, and you're able to build on your fundamentals and actually improve over time, because most people, whether you're like me, a golfer, or us as guitarists, a lot of times in our mind, we're going, I don't know how that guy does that, and
Hmm.
I can't do that. What am I missing?
Hmm.
And that's, I think, where you and I do well when we teach videos, right? The thing that I'm sure you found as you're doing instructions, just like you're showing them, hey, I screwed this part up. This is the way you're supposed to play it. It really reinforces to them, like, wow, maybe that's why this song that is not Enter Sandman that I'm playing doesn't sound like the original. It's because I really don't know what I'm doing.
Right. Or they play at a certain point, like you said, and their whole scaffolding underneath maybe isn't so secure. So when I teach something, I've done it so many times in private lessons that I know that if they don't know a whole list of other things, this isn't going to make sense up here.
And when you're teaching things like you're saying, like eruption, and I have found that there are some techniques that people halfway know how to do them.
Hmm.
In other words, you listen to Eddie doing hammer-ons and pull-offs, which is basically tapping.
Hmm.
It's the same sound. A lot of people just, they see how it's done, and what they end up doing is kind of doing a little flicking thing
Hmm.
instead of really hammering on, and you hear the notes as if they're being picked. I
Right.
mean, there's so many basic techniques. Like when students send me something to review, invariably they're not bending the notes to pitch. Their vibrato is not very good at all.
Hmm.
And there's a lot of even hammer pulls. Like I said, a lot of times when they're doing the hammer pulls, they're doing the little flicking motion that it's not solid. It doesn't sound like what they're hearing on the record, but it looks like it.
Right. So I had that same problem when I was first starting out, where I would do a quick little hammer on pull off, but I was more just touching the string and coming off of it. Then I realized,
Yes,
oh, if I get a solid sound on my way down, like a hammer, like an actual hammer, and then
yes,
kind of pluck my finger off instead of just pull off, like you think pull off upward.
exactly.
It's like, no, it's more of a plucking. And then I sped that up and it was so much louder and so much more substantial sounding. And that's when I knew the little details were the key for everything.
Oh, absolutely.
But here's my problem as a teacher. I don't know if you run into this, but the idea that if everybody's taught the exact same and everybody knows every technique perfectly, is there going to be sort of a blending of everyone sounding the same? Or do you find that each individual will still put their twist on any technique to make it their own?
Well, there's technique and then there's being an artist. And there's a lot of people, like you're saying, they have great technique, but they can't write a song to save their life.
Oh, yeah.
When I learned how to play guitar, it really was reel to reel tape recorder, playing the stuff back like that, real slow, or taking an album and slowing it down and all that stuff, and learning how to do this stuff with your ear. And in the process, you are hearing, I am not making that sound. How's that sound made? And either you figure it out or you go to your friend that is a better guitar player
Yeah.
than you and they show you this is what you're missing. So many people today have learned how to play with tablature instead of their ear. So they do not develop techniques to the degree that I did, you know, really just with my ear, listening hard. They're looking a lot of times. And, of course, they get it down and then they refer to the record and they hear that something's not right. So, I mean, it's awesome that there is so much stuff out there now that they are capable of learning, if not close, virtually perfectly because of the YouTube videos and all that stuff. But,
Mhm.
my era was you had to do it the hard way. And I mean, for me to get some licks, I could remember I was so tenacious that I would work on a lick for 8 hours. And it
Right.
wasn't like, oh, am I right or am I wrong? No, it still sounds kind of wrong, but it's as close as I can get it.
So I think you came from a time when you developed your own style just through sheer agony, I think, and repetition. But would you really want to have it any other way?
Oh, well, it would be different. It certainly would be different. I think that I would probably, the advantage is instead of working really, really hard to learn 8, 10, 15, 20 songs, someone right now can get tablature and have 100,
Hundreds,
150 or
yep.
200 songs that they know, yeah, not perfectly, but fairly well. It's a different era. And when I'm writing stuff right now, because I'm not in a group and I'm just sitting around with a guitar and I really like lyrics. Uh, a big part of what I do with my lessons has always been, and YouTube videos and such, as I'm a writer.
Hmm.
I A lot of my stuff is scripted out, and I'm basically acting. When reading a script and whatnot. But the script that I write, I've probably gone through it 25 or 30 times to make sure it says what I want in as few words as possible. And my lessons are mostly scripted for that reason. I want it to be concise. I want to get the point across. I want to be clear about how I'm explaining things. And I feel like there are times when I say, okay, I am going to do this next video and there's not going to be any script. And then I watch it and go, well, I really could do this a little bit better if I had my teleprompter out there. So,
A little too off the cuff
because
sometimes.
probably my biggest skill is and always has been, whether it's writing advertisements or writing lyrics or writing scripts for my lessons and such. I'm a writer.
One picture that I saw when I was younger of you really inspired me to want to get a certain guitar. And I know you're a big Randy Rhoads fan, right?
I have your guitar on my wall beside me.
Do you see it back there?
Oh yeah.
Oh, cool. Because in my screen, I only see it's cut off like that. But that guitar, I waited 3 decades to get, and I got it over COVID because it's like I just put the order in and it took like a year for them to finally ship it over. But then I'm like, why do I want this Jackson Randy Rhoads so bad? And I remember one of your early videos, you had like a red Randy Rhoads V. Is that true? Or was my misremembering?
Right there.
Oh, it's in the same room. Oh, that's so cool.
Yeah, I have the white Jackson, and both of them. I mean, the serial number I can't remember the white one, but the serial number is like 800.
Oh,
Like
wow, that's incredible.
Yeah. And the one that I used in my first full page ad, where I'm posing with the guitar and everything, it's not that guitar.
Mm-hmm.
They loaned me, God only knows what serial number that was, 4.
Oh, wow.
Whatever, you know, they loaned it to me. And then because I used it in the magazine ad and attributed, the guitar to them and all that, they gave me the white one.
They gave it to you?
And the red one too.
Oh my God.
Yeah, no telling what they're worth right now because they were, the first 1,000. The red one might have been the first 2,000. I'm not sure.
Wow. I just can't believe that you're sitting in the same room with the guitar that inspired me all these years to finally get one. That's so cool. And,
If I wasn't so wired in, I would grab it.
Oh, that's okay. I was going to grab mine too, but I was thinking, maybe someday we could do a dual Randy Rhoads V video or something. But were you in every single like Guitar for the Practicing Musician for like a certain amount of years? Because that's what I remember every time I saw your ad.
I was mainly in Guitar World.
Okay.
But I was probably in Guitar World for 25 years.
Wow.
At least.
Okay.
And I resisted Guitar for the Practicing Musician for several years because they were so into teaching. Guitar World at the time was not. Guitar World did not have tab. There was interviews and a whole different thing. So I felt it was a better fit for me to be with Guitar World. So early on, no Guitar for the Practicing Musician until at some point I broke down and it was like, yeah, they got tab. I'll advertise and did very, very well. I mean, I spent a lot of money on advertising, at least $2,000 every month for.
Yeah. So you just reinvested in yourself basically every month.
Yeah. I got this off the wall for you.
Oh my God, this is so epic. Look at that. It even has a little bit of like yellowing, right? Kind of like the age of the
Yeah,
white.
well, you know what? I had a problem with it. Let me see. The serial number is 293.
No way. A 3-digit serial number.
Right before I got my red one, it was on a guitar stand. I knocked it over and it broke the headstock.
Oh no.
Cracked the headstock. So when the guy repaired it and it was really beat up from me playing it on stage with Hawk and everything, he put a coat of clear lacquer over it, including, the pick guard would always, turn dark brown and everything.
Mm-hmm.
It looked beautiful when I got it. Anyway, the original finish is under the lacquer.
Okay.
And I have thought about getting someone to remove the finish and just kind of take care of the dings, but it makes it not exactly a completely original guitar. You may or may not be aware that I started selling my Hawk album 6 months ago for like $39 a pop.
Wow.
You want to hear the story? Do you have a minute?
Yeah, go for it.
I had a guy a year ago that wanted to order one of my Hawk albums. And he's a guy that, he's made me a guitar that's a fabulous guitar and everything. It's like, dude, I can't charge you for this. And I said, I have one box of 50 vinyls from 35, 40 years ago. They are the originals. And I've held on to them for all these years. As a matter of fact, about 30 years ago, I had a pallet of these vinyls that I didn't sell following me everywhere. And I decided, you know what? One day, if I throw all these away, this one box will be as valuable as this whole pallet. And I went
Yeah.
to a dumpster and I threw
Oh
all my
no.
albums in the dumpster, but I saved this one box
Oh
all this time.
no.
So he wanted, and this was about a year ago, he wanted an album. And I said, you know what? I've been meaning to sell these. I'll order all these materials and everything so I could send this to you, right? Send it to him for free. And then it was like, I don't want to sell these albums. Not because I don't want the money or they're so dear to me. It's just I don't want to package them up and go
Right.
through all that crap, right?
Yep.
But finally, someone else wanted an album, and I said, okay. I put it out in a newsletter, and the next day I had made over $2,000 selling these things at $39 a pop.
Oh wow.
Yeah, pretty cool. And I still have very few. I might have like 10 or 12 of them, right? But I assign all of them to people. But it's me going to the post office, just like this Canadian order. Sent a few orders out yesterday. Drive to the post office. It's
Yeah.
Christmas. How
Yep.
much fun is that? At least I can just stuff them in a box, close the door, and they're out of here. But this guy that he had to have it by Christmas lives in Canada. We went through all this. He's my student from all those years ago. I got in my car and I took that one order to the post office.
Oh my
One order.
goodness. That is dedication right there. How can I get one of those albums? I'll pay $50 for it.
I will. Hey, I'll send you one.
Are you sure?
No problem.
I really appreciate this. Like, it's such a crazy thing to have a YouTube channel and to be able to talk to people like you that I grew up, idolizing, and what you get. It's really weird to think that you were at the very beginning of my journey, and without you, I wouldn't be sitting here right now doing all this stuff. So, I mean, there has to be a ton of guitar players that share the same sentiment towards you. Do they ever
And
get
you
a
know
hold of you?
what? I never get tired of hearing it. I mean, who would get tired of hearing that?
Doug, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it, and let's do it again sometime if you want.
Well, obviously, this has been a great deal of fun for me, and thank you. Okay.
All right, Doug, take care, man.
Okay. Talk to you later.
Okay,
Bye.
bye-bye.